Spring is just around the corner, and I just can't wait for planting season. This year, I started small by building a little herb planter that can be used for indoors or outdoors. Do you want one too? Follow me and lass uns anfangen.
There's dirt on my hands, strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
Like always, I have big dreams, but only a little budget. So I went to Home Depot to get a few of those cedar fence boards. They always look great and are just a few dollars. I also got a few of those 1x2s. I started a project by cutting the pieces to size. Before cutting, make sure you tie back that hair and wear some protective glasses. And then let's get cutting. Like most of the time, I used my miter saw to start with. Once the boards were cut to size, I used my table saw to clean up the edges. I really started liking building projects out of cedar boards, since they're super affordable and good for outdoor projects as well. In the store, the boards look super rough, but once you clean them up, they have a very interesting pattern to them and just look amazing. So I find use for them for more and more projects. One thing I've noticed, that not every Home Depot carries cedar boards. In Florida, I have not been successful to find real cedar boards in my local stores. They do look like cedar boards, but they are not made out of real cedar. They are made out of some cheaper lumber that's treated as well, and not even Home Depot employees know exactly what these fence boards are made out of. Can somebody tell me why that is? In Nevada, they carry real cedar boards. Knowing what the boards are made out of and what they are treated with is especially important if you build garden boxes out of it. So make sure you find the real cedar boards. For the legs of the planter box, I used 1x2s that are planted to paint white. This wood is not treated, and if you intend to use the planter box outdoors, I definitely recommend painting it. But like always, I did forget to do this step. And once I noticed, it was too late to still paint them. So if you like to paint the legs, do it before you start assembling. And then it was time to have some fun. The rough pieces needed some sanding. Let's combine this with some good music and hip swings. Once the boards were nice and smooth, it was time to assemble the pieces. One thing when working with cedar, it is very important to pre-drill the holes, since the board will just crack on you. Also, I made sure to countersink all the screws, therefore I used a drill bit that has an attachment that will automatically drill the countersunk hole as well. In addition to all the screws, I also used wood glue to hold the pieces in place. Use a good amount of wood glue, but yeah, not as much as I just did. That's way too much. I misplaced my little blue rubber bowl that's made to hold the glue, so I've been pouring the glue directly onto the pieces, which is not so smart. The wood glue makes sure everything stays in place, especially if you intend to use the planter outdoors. It is needed in my opinion. I continued building the box while attaching the parts of the planter box to the legs. Since the planter box is pretty narrow, it makes it more difficult to attach the screws on the inside of the planter box. Just use an attachment on your drill and drill the holes at a slight angle. Once I had the outside of the box built, I needed to insert some slats for the bottom. To attach the slats to, I used 2 small pieces to build a lip that I can glue and nail the slats to. I'm just using wood glue and bread nails to hold everything in place. The bread nailer is definitely one of those tools that's worth their money, especially working with wood like cedar that just likes to crack a lot. I've never had issues with it cracking while using bread nails. Have you? Before I attach the boards that will create the bottom of the box, I attach 2 pieces of wood in between the legs. These 2 pieces will be used to create a shelf. You do not need to build a shelf, but you will need a few pieces towards the bottom to give the legs some more stability. So why not make it a little shelf? It looks nice and you can store things like garden shovels, seeds, or even a small watering can on it. It will just look much better. I still had a piece of the cedar fence board left, so I cut small pieces to create a shelf with them. Instead of just gluing on the whole cedar piece, I decided to cut the piece into little slats, not just for looks, but also it will allow the water to drain off more easily. I attached all of the pieces using wood glue and bread nails. First I applied the wood glue and made sure it set a bit. Then I flipped the piece over and inserted the bread nails coming from the bottom, so you do not have any holes from the top. If you have a hard time spacing out the parts equally, I would recommend using spacer blocks. There is nothing worse than finishing a project and having this final proud look at what you created, and then you notice that your eye is drawn to an uneven, not equally spaced block that you attached. I'm speaking from experience, so use blocks if you need. For the bottom, I decided to go with 3 slats. Again, I'm using slats in case drainage is needed for outdoor use. To keep the soil in place, we will either use landscaping fabric to build a liner, or if you don't want it to drain, you can use pool liner plastic. To make the slats fit in evenly, I used my Japanese pole saw to cut a piece off the corner. Passt wie angegossen. Fits like a glove. And again, I used the bread nailer to hold the pieces in place. By now, the glue for the bottom pieces was set enough so I was able to flip over the planter to attach the bread nails from the bottom. I flipped the piece over to have a look at what I've created so far. I really liked it, but I thought I was missing a nicer border for the top. This will also help to hide a plastic liner that I will insert later to keep the soil in place. So I used a bit more of the cedar board to cut something like a frame for the top. Now, to make it really fancy, you could do 45-degree angles for the corners, but I just decided to cut them straight. And again, I used wood glue and bread nails to keep everything in place. A word to the wood glue, this is type 3 that I'm using, and it is rated for auto projects as well. This is the most water-resistant glue that they offer. I would recommend going with it for outdoor projects or anything else that will be exposed to moisture. As I mentioned earlier, I intended to initially paint the legs in an acrylic white paint that would give it a barrier from the elements, but since I forgot, I thought it would be smart to attach little rubber legs to the bottom to not risk having them stand in pooling water and start rotting too soon. I had no bigger legs for furniture available, but I had some rubber legs that I use for my cutting board builds, and I think they would fit perfectly. So they will do for now. Once I had everything assembled, it was time to apply the finish. Usually for projects that come in contact with food, I always apply my food-safe MeikeMade liquid hydration wood oil and finish with a layer of Moose Magoose wood butter for a protective coat. But this finish is not recommended for an outdoor project, so instead I use tung oil. And of course, the best part about any project is the way the wood grain comes to life after applying the finish. Now the project was technically done, but I still thought something was missing. And then I thought of it. What's missing is some text on the front of the planter. And since I will be planting herbs in it, what better text is there than to write the word herbs? So I used my laser to cut out the word. For that, I used a piece of the cedar fence board. Perfect. Now all that's missing is some color. Remember as I made those leaf-shaped garden stakes a while back? To color them, I had purchased some green color, and I think this color would be perfect match for this project as well. There's a little bit of dried paint in the lid, but the paint itself is fine to use. Once the paint was dried, I glued on the letters onto the box. And I think it's exactly what was missing. I couldn't wait to stop by my local nursery to get a head start on my herb garden. I ended up picking some interesting herbs. The first one is a simple stevia plant, so I can sweeten my teas naturally. The second one is a lemon thyme. And the third one I picked is a pineapple sage. And oh boy, this one smells deliciously like a pineapple. Who am I kidding? Trying to use a glove for garden work. I'm definitely more of the type that just sticks her bare hands into the dirt. So off you go, you glove. And we are fertig! Wow, I absolutely love my new herb garden and I can't wait to use my exotic herbs in my cooking. Please leave me a comment, like and subscribe to my channel. And if you can, please join my Patreon. This helps me create more YouTube videos. Thank you so much for all your support. See you next Friday. Tschüss und auf Wiedersehen.